Savvy Central Radio, drawing out the best from our guests, with host Christina Nichman.
Welcome to Savvy Central Radio's premier interview networking event with our guest, Bryn Johnson. Bryn Johnson of Bryn Johnson Consulting helps small businesses and individuals with career management, social media, technology, recruiting, communications, and networking. Bryn's passion is to make complicated business issues simple. Today, Bryn shares with us her journey from corporate America to starting her successful marketing consulting business, and then creating and living her dream business as a career strategist. To find out more about Bryn, visit brynjohnson.com. Our sponsors for this event are Winty.com, a graphic design business. You can find out more about Winty at Winty.com. And Susan Gowdy, author of The Journey from Fear to Love is Shorter Than You Think. You can find out more about Susan and her book at susangowdy.com. Thank you so much.
This is such a nice, intimate little
I know,
thing.
I love it.
Welcome, everyone, to our living room.
Well, share with our audience a little bit how you came to finding your dream passion and how you even started from corporate to even working as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, okay. How many of you started as corporate into entrepreneurship? I was in corporate life for, almost 20 years. And loved it. Loved every minute of it. I was not a corporate refugee. I loved the structure. I learned how to be in business. I learned from really bright people. And essentially, I created my own rotational program I had at one position in one company. I was there at MetLife. I was there for 14 years with 22 bosses. So either they rotated themselves out or I rotated myself. And what I found is I kept having this quest for learning and to figure out what I wanted to do. Because when I graduated college and came into the corporate world, I had no idea what I was going to be when I grew up. No idea. I still actually don't know. But that's good, right? Because that's actually what an entrepreneur does. Is They just continue to think about what the next right action is. So for me, being in corporate, I transitioned from a big corporation into running a consulting business at Monster.com. And I had been in the HR focus and in the recruitment space. And so it made a lot of sense that I was teaching and helping and growing other businesses to learn how to recruit better. And in that place of continuing to kind of find new things to talk about, areas like employment brands, social media, they all started to pop up. I'm kind of dating myself now, but that was like at the height of when people started talking about that in relation to recruitment. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, all of a sudden I thought, well, this is really fun, and I'm in front of these audiences all the time, talking to 300-400 people in a hotel room as Bryn from Monster. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I'm like, I want to be Bryn from Bryn. And I didn't know that was entrepreneurship. I didn't think I knew any entrepreneurs. And it's interesting because I think I didn't think I knew a lot of things, and I actually did. And that's one of the lessons that I would share with people is you probably know, right? Like you probably already know how to do what it is you need to know how to do. You probably know some people that you could ask for help. You probably know, so I just kind of it wasn't this easy. It wasn't like I'm going to wake up one day and be an entrepreneur. Yeah. But I did have this moment, kind of like your moment at the end of last year at JFK Airport. I was coming back from a vacation. I was at baggage claim and, waiting for my bag, and the phone rang, and it was about the same time that we're in Wall Street right now, like all of these banks started to fall. And a lot of our clients were those banks and those financial institutions. And I got a call from the CEO at my company that said, we're going to have this big meeting and you need to be at this meeting regardless of whether you're on vacation. And we got the news that bonuses were going to be cut back. And I found out that my team was all going to stay intact. So I had a few thoughts. First thought was, good. There are babies and weddings and they have lives and they're all still going to have jobs. So the first thing I thought about was other people's careers. Note to self, right? Then the next thought I had was, okay, so my bonus is, I'm not going to have a bonus for the next 3 years. Interesting. That means I make less money than my team. note to self, bad compensation model. And then this, the third piece was, okay, I could just do this by myself. Foolish thought, okay, with no backing whatsoever, right? But I kept saying, it's a God thought, it's a God thought. So my God thought was, I'm just gonna run my own business. And that was in March, and by October, I had, built a website, because I thought that's what you needed to run a business, as a website. So I built a website and spent a lot of money on a website I didn't need. And then I decided to start this business. And the business, stepping out into entrepreneurship, was, I didn't really step out into marketing. I stepped out into anything you would pay me to do. That was my business. And I, thank you, Vito, because it's true. Because it's true. And I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands to say how many times you all have done that too. But gosh, right? Like, absolutely. If you'll pay me, I'll do it. So exactly. That was kind of my entree into where, because I was good at marketing, because I was good at social media, because it all made sense and the language was good, I just started doing that for people. And for me, I was really fortunate that my first client was my former employer. Mm-hmm. So I kind of started that consulting model, and it started to make sense. But I didn't stay there very long. So
yeah. And it's interesting how that happened. I've noticed, Bryn, as well, that a lot of entrepreneurs are made out of necessity. It's like for me, I was working in corporate for 20 years in finance. The last 4 places in 5 years were knocking me out. Oh, we have to downsize. And I'm like, I have to start all over again. Yeah. Because even if you start as a manager in a high profile position, you're still starting as having to prove yourself, starting all over again. Yes. And so it was my wonderful boss that said, well, go on out there and start your own business. It'll be a piece of cake. Yeah, you're right. Not true? Yeah, not true. Not true. And in my team, I loved my team. I loved my company. But when I said I'm going out on my own, people said, well, we were waiting for that. Like, how long was that going to take? They saw it before I saw it, even though I wasn't even sure what I was going to be doing, which sounds really crazy. Doesn't that sound crazy? But as I look back on it, I really didn't know what I was doing. Yeah. I don't recommend that model. So just, anyway. Yeah, and I get you, because when I first started and I found that the money wasn't coming in, my first initial model was what I did in corporate. So it was a financial consulting business. Mm-hmm. And that was not pulling in consistent income, because a lot of businesses we're cutting, we're not hiring. Yes. So then I'm organizing people's closets and walking their dog, and I don't know how that looks like, savvy customer service and collections. But then it's amazing how it all works out. So what was the transition for you, the aha moment where you realize, okay, this is not what I should be doing? Yeah, the statement that kept going on in my head was, this shouldn't be so hard. Yeah. Like, this shouldn't be so, why is this so hard? I grew up in a family where hard work was rewarded, right? So it wasn't as if I didn't want to work. But I'm like, this shouldn't be so difficult. Like, why am I feel like I'm pushing a rock up a hill all the time? Why do I want to cry all the time? I like to cry, but for me, crying is healing, not crying because I'm stamping my feet like a child, wanting to figure things out. I was blowing through money like crazy, like water. And I say that because I don't think a lot of people talk about that piece of being an entrepreneur, and I feel really strongly about it, that I didn't have a model, and I'll talk a little bit about that later perhaps. But so for me, the transition point, that moment, was when I thought it really shouldn't be this hard. And I recently, the last couple of years, said, the thing, I was sharing with someone that I was dating. And in that dating process, there's always that get to know, like, talk about what you're doing, talk about what you love, and they're asking you all these questions. And one of the questions that I kept being asked was, you've had this big corporate career, what was that moment for you? And the moments I always came back to were the ones that welled my eyes up with tears, and they were about building people's careers. Every single one of them. I'd run management training programs. I've been doing this the life I have now as a career therapist and a career strategist is what I've been doing since I was in high school, in college. Wow. And this is a kind of, my corporate world was created around helping people find positions only from the corporate side. Mm-hmm. And people were finding me. And finally, I stopped for a minute, and I would recommend this of everyone. It's like almost a 6-month check-in to say, where are my clients coming from? Who are they? What are they asking me to do?
Am I referring out more work than do I like for me, it was, I like my clients, I don't like what I'm doing for them. But the ones I loved were the ones who were just, I have this friend Bryn and she's really good at career stuff. You should talk to her, right? And this conversation happened so often that I was spending more time having coffees and lunches with people. And this is not a business model, by the way, is having them buy you coffee, and that's not payment. Okay, that's a really nice thing, but that does not pay the rent, right? And that was happening. And so that aha moment, it was gradual for me. But if I had been in a position where I was reassessing more often, I would have seen it sooner. That essentially I was attracting this business, and it's natural for me, and it's a comfortable conversation, and I feel also as if I'm doing really amazing work in the world. So what started to happen is I saw I can use social media to help people with their careers. I can use marketing to help people with their careers, and I was bringing all of it into one big place. Yeah. So.
And it's interesting how that happened, I noticed, because for me, for years, people have told me, I love getting together with you and just hearing your stories. You're so interesting to talk to. And it wasn't, now here's the thing. I heard you on a Blog Talk radio show, and then later on, after that Blog Talk radio show, you were picked up on your very own show.
Yes.
And that is the moment when I actually found out podcasting even existed. That it was,
I love that.
Yeah, and it was a moment, and that was my aha moment, because I was sitting here like, this is not working, and I heard you speaking on a podcast, first time ever I ever heard a podcast, and God told me, you need to be doing that. I'm like, what, talking to people online? And that was the moment, so you were part of that moment for me.
I know that.
Yes, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who are going to listen to this later on and who might be struggling, going, I know this isn't working, I'm struggling, and this is too hard.
Yeah.
Where do they begin at this point?
Okay, so this is an assessment piece that I think about a lot for people that I didn't do. I didn't do for myself, but now I ask all my clients to do it. And I now do it for myself often, which is I call it Sunday night crying. So it's ugly. So I think back on the times when I would get to, for me it was always Sunday night. Monday was going back to work, and I started to feel like a couple of thoughts. Either I don't want to do this, I don't want to go, I don't want to talk to those people, or it felt like college. There's a class that I'm supposed to do all the reading for, and I never did, and now I procrastinated, and now I have to go and show up, and that sinking feeling, like I don't know how that shows up for people, but that's the way I describe it, is that sinking feeling. And I ask people, identify where that sinking feeling is happening, right? What it is in your business, in your life, in your career, where that feeling is happening. And those are the things you need to look at first. Because if you can solve that, if you can bring some more joy into your life that way, if you're not doing enough reading, you're not spending enough time with your kids, you're not outside enough, you're reading your email under the table at dinner, and you're feeling like you're always, people do it, right? I've seen them do it. And that feeling of I haven't seen my family for weeks, I haven't visited my mother, like all those things that nag at you that make you feel really guilty when you wake up in the morning or make you really anxious, those are often the first things that need to be worked on before you figure out what you're going to do for your next move. Is clear that out, feel better about what you're putting out into the world or how your life is balanced. And I don't actually believe balance is possible, so I don't mean balance your life, because if you wait for that, it'll never happen. But get to the point where those nagging feelings start to dissipate. And that's a great next step for people. Instead of thinking, I need to figure out what I want to do for a living, I'm going to go to the bookstore and get 1,000 books from Barnes & Noble or Amazon and study my next career. Where would you have time for that? Right? Because you're busy having the sinking Sunday night crying feeling. So
Yeah. And I get that. When I had first ventured out and started my financial consulting business and it wasn't going well, my mentor said to me, well, what are the other things you love to do? I love connecting with people, walking dogs, walking. I don't see any of that turning into a career. And she said to me, well, just journal on it. Journal on it. And what kept coming back when I would talk to people without them just saying it is that you're a great talker. You're good at speaking to people. I think you should do something with that. And it wasn't until your interview that popped out. But, you know, you're talking about that sinking feeling again that you were just talking about. It's interesting because I think a lot of people will be feeling that in their day-to-day. And do you have any strategies for helping people get clear on that?
Oh, yeah, okay. So that talk for a living thing, it really resonated with me because I think to myself, it's kind of what I do now, right? I talk for a living. And my mother used to tell me, you know, stop talking. And a lot. I love my mom, but stop talking, Bryn, right? And it's like, oh no, I actually make money doing that now, Mom. This is where you know, like, look at me.
There's a reason why.
So what are those things? Like, guys, I have these assignments that I give my clients, and I'll give you guys a little bit of an insider. Like, if you were my client, this is what you'd hear. One of them is to go back to your childhood and look at the things that brought you joy. You know, for me, it was about writing and reading and being outside and talking and animals, right? I love animals. And it's interesting because that didn't turn into, I am now going to, you know, rescue animals for a living, although that was on my list. And, but I did do recruiting consulting for a company, a nonprofit that helps animals, right? And I was like, this is the best of both worlds. I get to do my brilliance in the world with a cause that I really care about. So there are ways that it ends up coming together. So one of the activities I give people is I believe that there is this Venn diagram. So imagine the 3 circles that intersect, and one of them is a list of things I love to do. I don't even have to be good at it. So when we started, before the tape started rolling, we were talking about, I love to dance, but I'm not good at it, and I don't really want you to see me do it. But that's okay, right? That's on my list, right? So things you love to do that you may not even be good at, they just bring you joy. Secondly, are things you're really good at, right? And the other is things people will pay you to do, right? Because I'm really good at knitting, and I can make a great sweater, but I can't make them fast enough to actually make enough money, right? So people aren't going to pay me. The cost ratio doesn't make sense by the time you buy the quality yarn. But I love doing it, and it brings me joy, and it calms me down. So when you take those 3 pieces and you intersect, it starts to get people thinking about, what would people pay me to do that I actually love to do? And, you know, it uses a skill set that I'm good at. I find that we're in a society where everything has a label. And I'm a firm believer that there's 2 things going on. One is that a lot of us will have a next career that doesn't exist yet. Like, I teach social media around digital persona for careers. None of that existed when I was in college. I didn't even have a computer. Right? So now I'm teaching how to use the internet, not only to find a job, but to do your branding of your own personal brand that I didn't even know what that was called. So to me, don't label things. That's the first thing, is don't label. And then the second piece, and the flip side of that, is don't be afraid to be something that other people are also. So this was a problem I had. I started talking to coaches and others who would say things like, oh, you need to be and they'd like create this big fancy title for me. I'm like, no, I'm a career coach. I'm a career therapist, a career coach, but I was afraid to say that because there were so many of them that I didn't understand how I differentiate myself. And the fun and the fun is in differentiating yourself, right? There are a lot of radio show hosts. There are a lot of them, right? Like, what makes you different than everyone else, right? And everyone has that differentiating factor, that sparkle about them. And so it's okay to be an accountant.
That's right.
It's okay.
Yeah. And what's cool about it is I find sometimes today people try so hard to make these huge fancy titles. You're like, okay, what is that? Explain for me what it is you do.
Exactly.
And it's like, at the nuts and bolts, you're a radio show host, great. What differentiates yourself from other people, like for us, it's that emotional connection we build with our audience and with our people. And for other people, it'll be different. You know, they'll go about it a different way, and it's all good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there'll be other people though out there who will take a new career, because I think what a lot of people do is they go out there and go like, okay, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to do what I'm seeing other people do that's working for them, and then they copy them. And it's really not their low-hanging fruit or something that they even have a passion for, but they go with that.
Yes.
And it doesn't quite work out. And then they throw out all their old skills, their passion, and it doesn't work. Why do you think this happens?
Well, I think people believe in reinventing themselves. And I personally don't think that's possible, right? How would I reinvent myself? Like, how would I, to me, that implies all of everything I ever was gone, and I'm going to be something else. Yeah. As opposed to like retooling, reskilling, like use what you want, re-engineering, right? But it's take what works and use it. Mm-hmm. So my example about talking for a living, I actually talk for a living, right? Like my greatest joy is getting a client on the phone and talking about and listening to their career. I spent so much of my time in corporate sitting at a meeting, listening, and then figuring out what everyone was talking about, and then bringing it back to my team and translating their crazy conversation into something we could actually utilize. I didn't understand that that's a skill that I can use in other places, right? And so I find it's, when you're in a transition of any kind, and there are plenty of people who work in many other kinds of transitions, but I'm thinking about career transitions specifically. When I'm in that place, that's probably not the only thing in my life that's transitioning, right? So a lot of times, I started up a business when I left my marriage. Like I threw it all out with the baby with the bathwater, as my grandmother would say, and I started up something else. And a lot of times there's something else in upheaval. So the more we can keep centered around the things that work for us and that we feel strong about and that we feel like we're contributing to the world, the better off the career transition process will be, because it's not a race. It's like I will bring another element to the table. Maybe I'll move. Maybe I'll have a different type of client who keeps coming to me, and all of a sudden I think, wait a minute, all these clients keep coming to me from this certain, I now have a whole host of international clients. I would tell you I'm not a global girl. I'm not that interested, and I'm not, but I love these people. They need help transitioning from other countries back into the States through their career. I never would have thought this would be anything I would do or be interested in. But because I stuck with what I knew, it came to me, right? I had room for it to come to me because everything else, it's like the Sunday night craziness stopped, and I had room. I had room.
And it's amazing how that happened. I found for myself as well that the minute you step out and start living your gifts and talents in the world, that other things start to pop up and you start living your life in a huger way than you could have ever imagined.
Exactly.
And doing the same for others around you.
Exactly. Yeah. You start inspiring.
Exactly. And like this, a couple of years ago, you checked me in corporate and see if I ever would have talked in front of an audience. I was like, heck no. On film, no less? No, heck no. Yeah. So for others out there who might be thinking, okay, now I'm in corporate and I'm thinking, this isn't quite for me. I'm thinking I want to get out of corporate. What would be your advice to them?
Oh goodness. I don't think there's blanket advice. Because some people need to stay there. Right. Yeah. So for some people, that's actually the right move, is to stay there. I mean, I know we have a live audience full of entrepreneurs. But there are people on the phone and who are watching this video who may actually need to stay there, right? They just may need to make a shift. They may need to have a different management structure. They may need to work in a different company. But what they're doing doesn't always need to be repurposed into their own business. And I think that's important because we're a nation that likes to start our own business, and some of us have needed to do it. There are people who need to do it because they've lost their position and they need to move on. But I would say that if you're going to make that move, that you create a plan. If you make that move, you think about how you can make money today, and then worry about the other things later. So other things, I mean, do a little networking, talk to people who already know you, and here's a oh wow, okay, I just thought of one. Here's a big one. Okay, you need to understand what you need help with in order to ask for help. I know that sounds really crazy. Like, of course you do. So when I started my business, all my friends wanted to help me. All my family wanted to help me. Everyone loves me, right? Oh, I love you. I want to help you. And no one knew how, and I didn't know how to tell them to do it, right? So I couldn't be specific and say, I am looking to speak to people who have a networking group that I can speak at. I am looking for accountants who have a small firm so that I can do recruitment advertising for them. I didn't know how to get specific because I hadn't done the work. But the more I got specific, I could say to them, I'm not looking for clients, right? Because I don't know who they are, right? And you're just going to send me people, and I'm not there, and then I'm going to have that hodgepodge of clients.
Yeah.
Instead, and a hodgepodge of skill sets that I'm working on. I'm going to run your social media, and I'm also going to walk your dogs, and I'm going to have this. I'm going to have this hodgepodge of a business. Yeah. Instead, it's to say, okay, if I'm going to start a dog walking business, I need to speak to people who travel for a living, who have a really big job, who cannot be home for 18 hours a day, who love their dogs. They spend money on their dogs. Where are those people? And all of a sudden, you can be much more specific, and then everyone wants to help you because they love you and they want to help you, right? But if you can't explain to them how to help you, and that goes for coaches, that goes for therapists, that goes for the guy who's going to make your signs and your business card, right? It goes for, like, you have to be as specific as possible. And my recommendation to people who are stepping out into starting their business is work on the things that you know you can be specific about today and let it build. And then get more specific and more clarity and let it layer on top of each other rather than try to do the whole thing at once. Because I started with a website that I didn't need. I now have more business than I know what to do with, and I don't have my website completed yet for my new piece of the business, right? And it's working, right? It'll be bigger when it's bigger, right? When it's time.
And I like that you mentioned that not everyone fits into being a small business owner. It's not for everyone, and that's okay. You can find a space that works in corporate or some smaller business, perhaps a different type of business. Yes. But I know you mentioned, because we actually started with networking ahead of time in this event. But you're going to give everyone 3 tips for networking, your top 3 tips. You're a networking queen.
Yeah, so we talked about this ahead of time because I love networking. So the idea was that we would talk about this for this live event, and then you'd all try some of this. And now I'm just going to tell you, you can try it out on anybody you want. So here are the 3 things that are just fun to think about. The first is you need to have small talk. And here's what I don't recommend. I don't recommend it has anything to do with, what your mom would tell you. No politics, no sex, no religion, right? Do not discuss these things as much as you want to, right? As much as you're passionate about it, unless it's part of your business, right? Unless it makes sense. If you are a political lobbyist, it makes perfect sense to talk about politics. Otherwise, I would recommend that instead you come up with 3 or 4 topics that you get really excited about. And I've even recommended to people you write them on the back of a card and you keep it in your wallet so that it looks like you're checking something, but really you're trying to remember what it is you talk about. Did you ever have that feeling where you don't remember what you talk about? Like, I don't remember what I like to do. I forgot. I'm nervous. I don't remember, right? They're going to ask me what I do for a living. I'm going to have some elevator pitch. Right? So instead, come up with 3 things. Like, I can always talk about coffee. You can always talk about the Muppets. Right? Like, you have no idea how easy it is to bring the Muppets into a conversation. It's fascinating. I can do it, right? So you come up with your couple of things that you feel really comfortable talking about that are beyond weather, beyond, like, we all kind of start with, in the city especially, we talk about weather, we talk about travel, we talk about commutes, we talk about where we live, we do all that, and then, pick up on something that someone says and take it to the next level. So that's the first one. The second, I would say, is I call it throw your own party. So this is your party, and I'm so grateful to you and the sponsors for having it, but I hate to tell you I'm having my party, right? So my party meant I met different people, and I introduced people who I thought should know each other, and I got to know certain people, and others I'll get to know later. Like, I created my own little party, and it all of a sudden makes, especially if it's a networking event with hundreds and hundreds of people, and you're thinking, I do not even know where to start, right? Start with your own party. Meet one person, ask them, who's the most interesting person that you've met so far? Would you introduce me? And then they'll bring you over, they'll introduce you, and you'll start a conversation. Because people want to help, right? So people want to help. Yes, generally, right? If they don't, then they're not your people anyway. Turn around, walk away, right? So nice to meet you. Have to use the restroom now. Excuse me, right? And you're out. You're out. So small talk is key, and knowing ahead of time what your small talk looks like. Thinking about it as your own party, so you can, if your party only has 2 people in it, that's okay, right? You met 2 people at this party that were, that you will connect with. And then the last one is research ahead of time if possible.
Good idea.
So know who's going to be in the room, know at least a few people in the room, and have an idea of why you're going. So you may go because you are looking for a new dog sitter. You may go because you're looking for someone to help you in your business. You may go because you're looking for clients. You may go because you want to practice talking about what you do for a living, or you want to wear a new dress and try it out. Your reasoning for going is your own. It's personal, and then figure out who in the room can help you get there. So researching ahead of time, whether you're using social media to do that, you are looking at conference lists, LinkedIn. You know someone else who's going, and you ask if they know anyone. It's how to turn this again back into your own party, but make you feel more comfortable in the room. And I find from a networking standpoint, that's the piece that throws people, right? Is the ability to actually feel comfortable in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been so fabulous having you out here today, sharing your story.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, and before you head on out, I want you to let everyone know where they can find out more about you and contact you and work with you.
Wouldn't that be so fun?
Yes.
I would find me on social media. It's probably the best way. So I am Bryn Johnson at Twitter, BrynJohnson. You can find me on Facebook. I'm also Bryn Johnson there because my name didn't change, and also on LinkedIn. So I would say those are probably the 3 best ways to find me. By the time this comes out, I am imagining that my blog and website will be up, which is Brain of Bryn, because everything that I do is basically from my brain. I don't know anything else. I don't know how you know anything else either. It's your brain, my brain. So brainofbryn.com, and by next week, we should be there.
Well, fabulous. It's been awesome having you on. Thank you so much for coming to Savvy Central Radio.
Thank you, Christina. It's like great to see behind the camera, so super fun. Okay.
Thank you.